Edd China played the cool, smart guy behind the bench on Wheeler Dealers for many years. The person who made fixes that were impossible look easy. After Ed left the TV, went into his workshop, and started making something that no one saw coming, he disappeared one day. This is the story of what happened. When they looked inside Edd China's garage, what they found will blow your mind. The truth is a lot different. Stories, sudden leaving. Fans of Wheeler Dealers were shocked when, in March 2017, Edd China said he was leaving the long-running and popular car show. The tall, friendly mechanic had been the star of the show for more than 10 years, known for his calm explanations and in-depth fixes. Ed did hundreds of car changes over 13 seasons, but he chose to step away. It wasn't because he wasn't interested in cars anymore. There were more to the reasons. They didn't agree on the new direction of the show and had different ideas about what Wheeler Dealers should become. The show, which started out as a low-budget UK series, became popular all over the world. It put Ed together with co-host Mike Brewer. Mike was in charge of buying and selling used cars, and Ed was in charge of fixing them up. Ed's in-depth workshop parts were what made Wheeler Dealers stand out. People saw the before and after. They learned how to do it. The nuts and bolts, quirks, and solutions of giving a used car a new lease on life. That honesty and respect for the craft became important parts of the show's character. But things were going to change. Through Discovery Channel in 2017, the show Wheeler Dealers would be made in the United States instead of the UK by a new production company. The move meant that the show would be made in a different way. The producers wanted to cut back on the workshop parts, according to Ed's goodbye video, which got millions of views in just a few days. Not as much in-depth repair video and more edits that make the story go faster and fit into a shorter time frame. Ed didn't agree. He talked about his reasons in the video in a calm but strong way. He said that this method would make the show less educational. He said that the risk wasn't just to the format, but also to its very nature. If viewers weren't shown enough details of the work, the show would become more of a light, entertaining material than a real record of restoring cars. That was a red line for Ed. He didn't want to give in, so he walked away. At the time, reports from inside the business world said that problems had been building for a while. Because of the change in production, the focus shifted from technical details to broad appeal, and the roots of the music moved from the UK to the US. Ed didn't see himself fitting into that future. His on-screen character was based on being honest and giving direct advice. Fans were shocked when he left. Reactions were strong and happened right away. A lot of people said things on social media. Some are mad, some are helpful, and a lot of them are just sad. For many longtime fans, Ed was what the show was all about. He was a rare kind of TV tech because of how calmly and professionally he fixed everything from stuck bolts to rebuilding whole engines. He was someone you could trust and learn from. Mike Brewer also spoke out, saying that he was sad about Ed's choice and reiterating his own plans to keep the show going. There was no doubt that Wheeler Dealers would be different from now on, even as he welcomed Ant Anstead as a new co-host. Ant is a former Formula One mechanic. Because Mike and Ed had been together for years, they had grown close. It wasn't easy to recreate their relationship. Ed, on the other hand, didn't get angry. He avoided the drama and didn't point the finger. Instead, he gave his fans a calm and reasonable answer. But it was clear what it meant. The Wheeler Dealers account that made him famous was no longer a place where he could stand up for what he believed in. There were also effects on the person. Reports and sites like The Sun and Metro say that fans didn't like either Ed or Mike, and some of the comments were very mean. Some of it was lost. Ed later admitted that his choice had made a lot of people feel strongly. He stood by his choice, but it wasn't easy dealing with the consequences. In interviews that followed, he said that leaving was sad but essential. For someone who put quality above all else, there was no going back once they crossed that line. After that, he was gone. Edd stayed out of the public eye for almost a year after leaving Wheeler Dealers. There are no new shows or big news. Fans were interested in what he was doing. Was he worn out? Was he done with TV for good? Things would get better, but not yet. To begin, Edd China needed some time. We would later learn that he used this time to think, reset, and build something new in his own garage, where the doors were locked. Into the void. The disappearance was strange and out of character. Edd had been well known in the car world for a long time. Not just through the show, but also through public events, talks, and shows all over the UK and beyond. Then, when the news stopped coming in, rumors took its place. Had he given up TV for good? Was he worn out? Did he work on something behind my back? There were a lot of questions but no solutions. Not much is known about this time period, but telling. Edd didn't just disappear, he just turned inward. Several insider stories and interviews from later years say that he went back to his workshop, which was the same garage where many of his earlier inventions, like the motorized office chair and street-legal sofa, were born. This time, though, there were no cameras, no script, and no outside due dates. There were only tools, thoughts, and time. People who knew Edd well said that he was recharging during this time. He had been shooting on tight schedules and working within the limits of TV production for years, and all of a sudden he could go at his own pace. He did it. He wasn't just sitting around, far from it, but his attention changed. He wasn't building anything useful. He was just building again for the sake of building. He was going back to basics, messing around, trying new things, and fixing problems just because he wanted to, not because he had to. Edd never stopped thinking, which is something that people who knew him often said. He was drawing, making prototypes, and going back to projects he had left for a long time, even when he wasn't in the public eye. Some of his ideas came from before Wheeler Dealers. They were concepts that didn't work well on the show or inventions that needed time and space to be perfect. He had both now. At the time, there were a few unconfirmed claims that he was trying out electric vehicle conversions. It wouldn't be a surprise. Edd has always been interested in green technology and different types of power lines. Some people even thought he was working on a way to add new electric drivetrains to old cars without changing their look. It was only a whisper, though. During that year, there was no hard evidence to show what was going on behind those closed garage doors. But what did get out? Fans were interested. Several threads on online sites asked where Edd had gone. People were filled with memories and worry when they watched old videos of Wheeler Dealers on YouTube and left comments. Some friends thought he had quit the business for good. Some people thought he was planning something big, but most people just hoped he was okay mentally, physically, and artistically. That worry wasn't without reason. There are effects when you quit a big show, especially if it was the one that made your career. In retrospect, Edd himself said that the change had been hard and stressful. He was calm as he said goodbye to the public, but he had just cut ties with a global platform, a steady income, and a project he had worked on for years. It makes sense to think that they needed time to think about everything. It's also possible to get burned out. Years of tight production deadlines, pressure to deliver, and being watched by producers, fans, and bosses can wear down even the toughest people. Some people in the business say that Edd had been quietly complaining about being unhappy in the months before he left. Even though the artistic spark was still there, the situation didn't allow it to grow. The garage turned into a safe place. Edd also took some time away from social media during this time. There was no more tweets from him. His YouTube channel stayed empty. The silence was almost creepy for someone who is so linked to do-it-yourself projects and being open and honest. There were times when rumors came up. Some fans who were really paying attention said they saw him at local tech shows or quietly going to classic car meets. These appearances led to even more rumors. Was he looking into the market? Looking for people to work with? Secretly putting a new idea to the test? No one was sure. And Edd didn't say anything. That being said, the longer the silence went on, the stranger things became. What did that building have going on? Did Edd just want to take a well-deserved break? Or was he doing what he always does and figuring out something that would surprise everyone? It got more and more exciting as 2018 went on. A few mysterious changes began to show up. There were short blog posts, interviews, and other hints that something was going to happen. Edd was still there. His only goal was to stay hidden. Then, almost exactly 1 year after he stopped working in TV, a new clip showed up on YouTube. There was no big deal or marketing campaign, just a movie called Garage Revival Episode 1. It was clear from the name. But before the comeback could happen, the year of silence had to be used for something. There wasn't a gap. There was incubation. Things that had been going on in the garage were about to change everything. Workshop starts up. Edd China came back in May 2018, but not to TV. He came back on his own terms with a YouTube show he made called Edd China's Garage Revival. Fans weren't met with marketing hype or a flashy rebranding when Edd came back after almost a year of quiet. Instead, they were met with something simpler, purer, and definitely Edd. The idea was surprisingly solid, which was nice. Look for people who have started restoring cars and help them finish what they couldn't do on their own. Edd went to home garages all over the UK in each show to work with regular car fans whose cars had been sitting idle for years. These projects had been put on hold because of a lack of time, technical know-how, or money. Edd was there to bring them back to life. There was more to Garage Revival than just cars, though. It was about people. The show touched on something more personal, the stress of unfinished dreams, how much each dirty frame means to them, and how good it feels when someone finally gets the help they need to move on. Edd wasn't just fixing engines, he also got things moving again. The first show was about a classic VW Golf GTI that had been left half-built and not finished. The owner had done everything he could with the tools and information he had. He let Edd join the chaos of his unfinished project. After that, a careful and honest evaluation of the car's state followed. Edd wasn't interested in being filmed. To make things more interesting, he didn't make things easier. In front of everyone, he got down on the ground and described what had to be done and why. That sound became what the Garage Renaissance was all about. Without a doubt, it was real. There are no voiceovers or pre-recorded music. Just a camera, a car, and Edd doing what he always does best, discussing complicated car problems in simple language. He showed how to free a brake line that was stuck. If a gearbox wasn't working right, he went over the theory of how everything worked inside. Fans who missed his in-depth looks at wheeler dealers felt like they were back home. The production values were meant to be low. Edd was no longer getting help from a TV station. There weren't any chief producers in charge of the format. No strict due dates for broadcasts. He was in charge. He wrote, spoke, and even helped with the editing. It wasn't smooth, but it was real. And that was the whole point. The answer came right away. Within days, the first show had tens of thousands of views. The comment section seemed like a get-together. Fans were glad to see him again and thanked him for staying true to his style. They were also glad that the problems in the business hadn't made him lose interest in what he did. Some people said it was even better than wheeler dealers. It was more personal and easy to understand. More on why each fix is being done. From the inside, the start of Garage Revival was also a test. Insiders in the business say that Edd wasn't sure if he wanted to come back to the public eye at all. He could try things out without committing to a long-term deal with the YouTube series. It let him try new things and get back in touch with his audience directly, without any other people getting in the way. Also, it changed how he interacted with his neighborhood. Fans could now leave direct comments on his work and get replies for the first time. They could give him ideas for cars to talk about, ways to explain things, or even information he might have missed. More episodes came out over the next few months. Here is a triumphant trumpet, and there is an abandoned Land Rover. Each story moved slowly and didn't take any shortcuts. There weren't any flashy changes set to music videos. These were real fixes that had to be done in the real world. Fixes that weren't planned, stubborn bolts, and surprising problems. Everyone who has done work like this before knows how hard it can be. That's what made Garage Revival stand out. It was not about being perfect. It was about not giving up. Edd wasn't showing people how to make show cars. He was showing them the right way to do that one task. Kind you've been trying to stay away from for months. In this way, he brought back the spirit of hands-on learning about cars, something that was slowly disappearing from most car news sources. It is important to remember that Garage Revival did not become a huge brand, but it also did not need to. It was Edd's own project, a way for him to get back to doing what he loved while still being on his own. It was a clear message for people who had been following his story for years. He wasn't gone. He just went off in a different direction. Edd had shown that he could make his own plans by the end of 2018. He didn't need a company with a lot of money to stay popular. It was enough for him to have a camera, a job that was worth finishing, and a reason to get his hands dirty. That was it. Garage Revival turned on the workshop lights again, and this time they were all his. Behind the doors. After some time, a private tour was set up. When they opened Edd China's garage door, what they found inside will blow your mind. The workshop where Edd has been slowly building his own world for years is hidden behind double doors that aren't marked and past a messy driveway and shelves full of old parts. It's also hard to decide where to look first once you're inside. The well-known street-legal sofa, which is made up of seats, is leaning against one wall. Suspension parts, and just plain weirdness. The motorized bathroom is close by. It's a toilet on wheels that works completely, with pipes and a steering column. These tricks weren't just for fun. Real cars with license plates that used to drive around the streets as examples of what's possible when creativity meets tech. There was a lot of wonder and fun, but one finding stood out. Not in a good way. People who were there for a rare private tour of the garage said that in a dark back corner they saw a prototype that had been partly taken apart. It had been meant for a public demonstration that clearly went wrong. It was called a self-steering bar stool and an experiment in small-scale personal movement with gyroscopic stabilization. However, the project had been left in a state that can only be described as unpleasant. Wires were hanging from control boxes that were on fire. The board below had burn marks on it. One witness said it was clear that the lithium battery case had been damaged by heat, and charred material could still be seen on the equipment around it. Even though no one was hurt, the evidence showed that Edd had just barely avoided a major workshop fire. It was a rare look into the risks of constant innovation for a maker known for being precise and in charge. "That thing looked like it tried to cook itself alive," said someone in the business. As an option, this fits, even though it's a terrible idea. The shed is more than just a play area. The place is a lab. Edd doesn't check his thoughts. He goes after them. Some turn into legal works of art. Some, like the self-steering bar stool, fail horribly during the testing phase. But each bolt, sketch, and mock-up covered in soot tells the same story. A mind that keeps getting bigger. People don't see this side of Edd very often. In the end, he is a creator who works alone, is full of tests that make it hard to tell the difference between genius and madness. It only shows how far he's ready to go to make something that no one else would dare try if some of those experiments have a few burn marks on them. New things. After Garage Revival's small but heartfelt success, Edd China was at a very important crossroads. He had shown that he could do it on his own, that his name, fame, and love of the show could carry it without the help of a big network. Edd didn't just want to come back to the screen, though. It had to do with completely changing his place in the world of cars. He was able to rethink not only his job, but also his priorities as a creator and engineer during his time away from mainstream TV. A lot of people still knew him as the guy from Wheeler Dealers, but Edd had been thinking about things other than combustion engines for years. He had been playing around with ideas for sustainable transportation, alternative powertrains, and hybrid retrofits for a long time, long before electric cars became popular. When he got a stage that was all his, he could finally say what he was thinking to everyone. Edd began a new YouTube show in April 2021 called Edd China's Workshop Diaries. The method was easy, but the goal was bigger. Workshop Diaries took viewers right into Edd's garage, where he kept his tools, projects, and experiments. This was different from Garage Revival, which was about helping other people finish their unfinished projects. It was back to the kind of in-depth, educational material that made him famous in the first place, but now with an edge that looks to the future. Every week, the show had new episodes that were usually between 20 and 40 minutes long and covered a wide range of topics, from taking apart engines to analyzing parts of electric vehicles. The tone was what made it stand out, though. Workshop Diaries wasn't trying to be a high-tech, high-octane TV show. It was personal, honest, and slowly built up. Edd talked to the camera like he was an old friend.